Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Now, how can I make the categorical statement that all the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that are watching Marriage with Joy are all good-looking? Because by definition, if you made the time to tune in to this amazing show, Marriage with Joy, it means you're always looking for and finding the good. That's a good-looking person. Looking for and finding the good, and you have found good in abundance because you've tuned in to consciously and conscientiously Marriage with Joy. So today marks an anniversary. I think this is we're beginning officially our third year. And to mark this occasion, not only are we live on Facebook, which is very nice, we're also live right now on YouTube, and we're also live on LinkedIn. Now, I especially want to do a quick shout out on LinkedIn because there are a number of people that are very close friends of mine and fans of whatever we do because we do good stuff in the world. You hear that, kids? That's what we do. We be good. Isn't that nice? We be good. Johnny be good. Okay, well, in this case, it's us be good. So I want to do a quick shout out to a certain number of people on LinkedIn that I'm very friendly with and have been very helpful to me and, God willing, to the show. And they are Matt Willis, yay, Rachel Beck, all right, Randy McNeely, Elia Gorgias, and he is Corey Warfield, Ahmed Imam, and our wonderful crew at JVMM, headed up by Joe Applebaum. And together, these amazing people have more than 2 million followers. So they're going to bring a lot of people and eyeballs to hear what we have to say because they know that what we have to say matters. See, we make a difference. We're all MAD people on this show. MAD stands for make a difference. And to do something a little different for our show today, I want to do a little bit more of an introduction because what we've done is we've upgraded, as I say, not only on Facebook, but YouTube and LinkedIn. And we've upgraded our title. Instead of the marriage webinar, it's Marriage with Joy. And of course, joy is not just said joy, it's joy. And joy is a wonderful acronym. It stands for Journey of You. Because it's really what life is all about, right? Joy is really about the journey of you. And in our humble opinion, not just mine, but wonderful Dr. Diane Medved, fabulous Maurice Sweeney, and Lori McDermott, who are our panel, we recognize, believe, and wholeheartedly endorse that marriage is one of the most wonderful ways of recognizing the best of you. In other words, if you really want to have joy, which is the journey of you, one of the best ways to do that is in a marriage setting because it enables you to bring out the best because it's not always easy. That's what brings out the best. You see, when you have the ability to, how should we say, sharpen the sword, but not against each other, but to work into a process and recognize that there is another. And if there is an opportunity to have children, to be able to work with children and recognize that you're really talking about the future of society. That's really what marriage is. Marriage, in my humble opinion, is a bedrock, a foundation upon which we can build whatever structure we want. It can be as tall as you want, as broad as you want, but it really is foundational to enhancing and growing a society that is united for a purpose. And that purpose is to enable people to find joy, happiness, peace, and love. Doesn't mean everybody will, but at least the opportunity is there. And that's really what life is really about. Having opportunity, availing yourself of it, and really growing. Because personal growth, what else is there? There's only so much you can eat or drink or swim, in my case. But personal growth is really what this is all about. So I say thank you, a big hearty hello. And by the way, a big shout out to our producer, Rick Reynoso, for putting together everything. Anything you like on this show in terms of the optics and things like that, it's all because of Rick. So yay, Rick. Yay, Rick. He does fabulous work. Always there. If you'll notice, our introduction today was different than before. This was, I thought, much better. He did that on the fly. I mean, it was just really tremendous. So it's all because people who are involved with what we do care. They recognize that we do make a difference. We're touching people's lives. We have, thank God, hundreds, if not thousands sometimes, of people who send in questions. And today's topic is something we've been working with over the past 3 sessions. So we're going to continue with it because it is so, how should we say it? It is so real. Because of the time of year. I don't like usually announcing the actual date of our webinar because these live in perpetuity for eons to come. But I will say that it's right around the end of August, happens to be the year called 2022, but beside the point. But it's back to school season. And that means something very important to every single family, whether or not you have children. You see, if you have children, you're sending them back to school. Well, obviously there's that whole process. But if you yourself don't have children, but you know families that do, and that you want to raise the next generation or 2 or 3 or 4 in the, how should we say it, in the same process that we were blessed to grow up in, which is a country that is allowing opportunity for every single citizen, then you really want to make sure that there is such a thing as choice. I don't mean just school choice. I mean the choice of being able to understand that there are situations in life where you can avail yourself to make life better for yourself, again, your children, your progeny, yet unborn. So we're going to be discussing something very tough because it is back to school. And the real question on the table, as it has been for the past 3 sessions, is whose kids are they? Now, you might think, well, that's kind of an obvious question if you're listening to us for the first time. Whose kids are they? Obviously, the parents. Well, I wish that was that simple in today's world. There is a war raging, first certainly in the United States, but even throughout the Western world. And the family is under attack. And the main reason the family is under attack because those who understand these things, the other side, for want of a better term at the moment, recognize that the family is the foundation. And if you can uproot or hurt or do some damage to the foundation, then you can bring down the building. So we are dedicated to making sure that the foundation is strong, resilient, capable of withstanding all the kinds of battles and earth upheavals that are happening. So I'm going to begin with, I hope it's an articulate question because I'm the one who articulates the questions. Just want to give everybody the way this thing works. We get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. Most of the time, they're very positive. Sometimes, okay, that's their problem. But most of the time, they're very positive. And they say, okay, Barry, sure, you didn't quite phrase my question right, or this and that. So I try to take, let's say, in this case, there were about 176 questions, all revolving around the same idea. And I hope I can articulate the question enough to make it either sensible to our panel, and if they can't understand it, then they'll answer however they want. But essentially, the question comes to this. Again, we're talking about school, and most schools in the United States of America, not all, by the way, but most schools in the United States of America are allowing children to attend mask-free and teachers to be mask-free. So that is also a very big change from the past couple of years. But that's not the question. The question really comes to the following. There is a, how should I say it, seeming agenda. And in some cases, not even seeming. There is an agenda in many public schools throughout the country, and even in some elite private schools, where the idea of a person's skin color becomes a point of either dissension or discussion. And we're talking about beginning in kindergarten through high school. So we're not talking about kids that are 18 plus. We're talking about kids that are oftentimes as young as 5 years old. So the question comes for the panel, what do I do if and when my kid or kids come home from school and say, Mom, Dad, what is this about my skin color that makes me different? Do you hear the question? I know I'm trying to avoid the following, by the way. I'm trying to avoid the question about white privilege or being black. I'm saying, why should skin color even be an issue when it comes to schooling? That's how I'm phrasing the question. So, as always, we have our leadoff batter, that famous, wonderful rookie out of Washington State, Dr. Diane Medved. And for those of you who don't know, you can look her up because her CV in Wikipedia is 6 pages long. But suffice to say that she's an author, a raconteur, a podcast a guest, sometimes even a podcast host. She's happily married for many decades, a mother, yes, a grandmother, and given to great insights, and a psychologist also, so what she has to say makes a difference. So Diane, the question again is, why is it, or what should we do with kids who are coming home from school and asking about why is skin color important?
It's a very complicated question. I mean, the truth is, skin color is and isn't important. I'm hearing an echo, by the way. I don't know if you hear that. Okay. Skin color, now it's much better, is and isn't important. Certainly, we can't all pretend that there are no different skin tones. But I think at the same time, we're all aiming for the same goal, which is to treat each individual with respect, regardless of how they look. And skin color is only one facet of how people look. So, I mean, some people are tall, some are short, some have brown hair, some have black hair, some have blonde hair. There are many different qualities. And I think what we can all refer to is what Dr. Martin Luther King said so famously. We're looking at the content of each person's character. And if you are trying to decide who to be your friend, that's where you go. Is this a good person? Is it a kind person? Is this a respectful person? Is this person treat you well, which is a gauge of all those things? And so you say to your children, yeah, the skin color is one difference between us, but it's also one thing that we don't have to have as a barrier. It's just a fact. Just like you, child, were born in 2018, and I was born in. The point is that we all are different. We are individually different, and seeing those differences shouldn't be ignored. But at the same time, that's not the basis for friendship. It's not the basis for respect. Our behavior is much more important. And then you can talk to your child about the content of character. What does that mean? What is character? What are the qualities that make a good character versus someone who you'd rather not be a close friend? And I think those are the types of discussions that you should have. And if the teacher or the school wants to insist that skin color is important, then you need to reiterate your own values. In our family, we don't look at people's skin color first. We look at how they behave first and what they do. And are they a good person? And do they give to others? Do they share with you at school? And so you reiterate those values at home and, very importantly, model those values. If your kid hears you reading the paper and you're making comments that are in contradiction to that may be saying, oh, those so-and-so type of people, that would be undoing what perhaps you want to teach your children. So be so careful about the model that you provide them and reiterate to them over and over, this is not the way that we think. We look at how people behave. It doesn't matter what their skin tone is. There are skin tones that go, and then you could even display the range of colors of people and how beautiful it is, the rainbow of colors of people. Just like there's a beautiful rainbow of colors in the sky, there's a beautiful rainbow of colors of people, and we should appreciate each one for its own special hue and its own special gift, and that each one is worthy of respect. I don't think that, if it's a real problem for you as a parent, then you need to talk to the teacher about it, remembering that the teacher's on your side, and the teacher wants your child to end up as educated and as caring and open and giving as you want your child to end up. So you're working with the teacher. The teacher is not your enemy, even if that teacher seems to be conveying messages you prefer not to have given that way. You can discuss that with the teacher. As long as you approach as someone who is respectable and is respected by you, and that you are working together and not in an adversarial way. It's so important. The education establishment is not your enemy. It's your friend and your surrogate when you're not with your child. So that's why you want to embrace the teacher, embrace the school, and explain to them how you feel and what's important to you, and work together with them to formulate whatever the child gets in school that might be not the way you want, to be more in line with it. So anyway.
Let me make mention of some of the things you said here, because I think you brought three important points to the fore that I want to emphasize. First of all, is we treat everybody with respect. In other words, skin color. I laugh. I'm sorry. I don't mean to minimize anybody with this. I don't understand it. I truly don't. Now, granted, you can say, well, that's because you're white, Barry Shore. I'm not white. I'm actually Caucasian, but that's a different story. But treating human beings with respect is a fundamental value of living as a human being, in my humble opinion, and as you just articulated. And it is a bedrock value in a relationship, specifically in marriage, what we're talking about. The idea of using this as a jumping off point for now deepening understanding of what we call character. That's great. In other words, to use this as a springboard, as to learn. And the other point that you make is that seeing the teacher or teachers as an extension of oneself, surrogate, as it were, and at least going in with that attitude. If things turn out to be that not way, that's a different story. But to go in with that attitude, as opposed to a different way, as an opposition, is very important. So thank you for that. I just want to make mention of something that happened to me as a kid. I grew up in a very wonderful place called Brookline, Massachusetts, which is very wealthy and a very eclectic place. And yes, okay, mostly white. Happens to be a lot of Jews there as well, but it wasn't all Jewish, but large population. But the point is that there were, in our school, we had almost every group of people you can imagine, because people who were successful lived in Brookline. It didn't matter. It would matter more about their pocketbook than about their skin color, right? Hello. So you had successful Black people, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, and Asian people, etc. I met my first albino. I've actually only met two albinos in my life, but I met an albino when I was a kid. And it was fascinating because that's really the only white person I've ever met in my life. I met two of them. Albinos are really white. If you ever meet one, you'll know. White. I look like a dark-skinned person next to an albino. So you're right about that idea of the panoply of color. How do you like that one? That beautiful garden. And it is truly wonderful to be able to have people understand that skin color is as much a part of an important aspect of a human being as, like you said, the pigment of their hair, blonde, brunette, I mean, I used to have other than white. So yes, hello. Okay, wonderful Maura Sweeney. For those of you who don't know, she is the ambassador of happiness, so dubbed by the United Nations, no less. So Maura, would you let's weigh in on this idea that kids are going to school and they're being taught about that skin color matters. What do you do? What do you say to your kids? Or what would you say to people watching to help them navigate this?
Isn't it interesting that skin color matters?
Hard to hear you.
Wait a minute. Still here? Let's see. Could you hear me any better?
Better.
All
Not
right.
great, but better.
Really?
Right.
All right. I'll let me know if this is loud enough.
It sounds like 1930s radio, very tinny.
How about that?
Right? Did I get it right? 1930s? That sounds okay.
Okay. Anyway,
The ghost of Maura passed.
So it does
Okay.
make a difference. Interesting. We were taught that skin color should not matter, right? For how many decades was that the message? It was a message in school, it was a social message, and now for whatever reason, we're going to skin color does matter. I will agree with you, Barry. When I was growing up, and even now, I don't even get the whole idea about skin color mattering. There was an old Broadway show. I believe it was called South Pacific. Do you remember this? You've got to be carefully taught. The idea behind it being that people don't think skin color, they don't think ethnicity, they naturally relate to their fellow humans. But when we are taught that it matters, and when that message is repeated, then we end up modeling after it, whether it be good or negative. But I was truly one of those people and remain that way where it doesn't matter to me. So it's almost like I had to be taught that it does matter. Case in point, growing up, I had dark, almost reddish hair. I had to learn through reading that in America, at some point, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people were considered the best. They were considered prime, when meanwhile, I was thinking I'd love to go to the beach and get a very dark tan. And I would get darker than most Black people would. And I loved it. I loved being tan. So I would say not everybody does think that skin color matters. The second thing is that modeling is so important. How do we bring up our children? How do we deal with our fellow man? What is the way in which we relate to each other? When we do it that way, we convey that to our children. We convey it to society. And if we have to be carefully taught by maybe words and messages, how much more powerful is it in society when you have people who are out interacting with people at school, at work, or anywhere else, and where color, ethnicity doesn't matter? Diane referenced the very thing. I don't know if you saw me guessing. In the 1960s, when we were all looking to Martin Luther King and extolling his virtues afterwards, he was conveying a single message. I look forward to a time when my children will grow up and they'll be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Truly, if I were to choose friends, I'm not going to choose them by their skin color. I'm going to choose people that I like, that I trust, that are thoughtful, that are faithful, that have good qualities. And so when it gets back to this whole idea of school, I would say, for one thing, we model what we wish our children to become. If we're not judging or treating the world differently based on skin color, then hopefully our children will end up growing up the same way. And I would also say if there were something in school that were teaching a different message, I would absolutely go in and I would start asking some questions, starting perhaps with the understanding that I misunderstood something, because I would expect that the school system, that the educators would be there for all the children and for the benefit of the souls and the personal development of all the children and the good social health and growth. And so that's about all I would say. Do I still sound like I'm in the 1930s?
Yes, you do, but it's okay. It's so fascinating that so many different modalities of sound here. I do want to make mention, you said two important things I just want to use as a springboard. One is the musical South Pacific, which is actually a great musical. Happens to be that the colonial empire of Britain, which was the largest empire in the history of the world, the sun never set on the British Empire, was built on skin color. In other words, your position in society was determined by skin color. If you were darker, let's say in Malaysia or in India, or you would not be able to compete with Caucasians. That was reality certainly until the end of the Second World War. And let's say even into 1950s, certainly in the southern part of the United States. So we know, we sensitive beings that we are, the panel here, we're sensitive to reality that yes, there was real discrimination, against people of color, not just black people, by the way. We're talking about against Native Americans, against Chinese. I mean, okay, people were people. They were dumb. You know why? Because we're saying example and we're saying modeling, but for good or ill, at least it wasn't my parents, but I know my parents sort of escaped it, but their parents didn't. Their parents were part of their society, which was just very discriminating. Very. They didn't come out of it. They didn't emerge like we are. Think of what we're doing. We're quoting Martin Luther King. Now you might say, well, gee, of course we would. Well, no, not of course. And that was a struggle. That was a big struggle, huge struggle. But thank God we began and are beginning to get over it. The reason I'm getting so many letters and questions is because it seems to be a shift in the other direction. That's what breaks the heart, right? We thought we were really progressing, and all of a sudden we're finding out, no, you're a racist and you just don't know it. We'll go let Lori speak, but I just want to bring that to the point that, yes, it was true. Skin color did matter until very recently. We thought we were through it, and now it looks like it's not, and it's a struggle. So Lori, you grew up in Chicago and you're raising your family in Southern California in a very upscale, affluent area that, in quotation marks, is probably very white. But I don't know, when you're in school, were your kids either discussing race, or is race even an issue in the school that your kids went to, et cetera?
Oh, yeah. They're being told they are the privileged people and they have to be careful about what they're doing. And they're not getting
Really?
things that they might. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My son last year came home and said, apparently I am a less privileged person than I'm supposed to be, or I'm supposed to be being careful about it. Yeah, they're being directed at that. And it's like, why are we talking about it? It doesn't make any sense. It's like we're talking about it. Why? Like, let's have the conversation about like that. We're not defining anyone by their race. My husband has been looking for work in different places. And the big thing now is, hey, I don't want to tell you this, but we're not looking for any more white people. What?
Wait a minute, somebody said that?
Yeah. Out loud. It was someone he knows who works for a company. And they said, we're actually looking for a black man. Da, da, da. That's what they're trying to do. They have certain things. If you notice on television and you look at a commercial, let's say a Gatorade commercial or some kind of commercial, there is a white person, a black person, a Chinese person. They're representative. I get that because back in the day, they didn't do that. It was all white people. If you look at the Barbie dolls, everything was white. And if I was a little black girl and I could only get a Barbie doll that was white, I would feel bad about that. But we've changed that. You can get a black baby doll. You can get a Chinese baby doll. We're as you said, we were stupid, and now we're getting smarter. But we've gone back to stupid again. And I don't know what is happening, but we need to unstupefy ourselves and get out of this again and go back to, you are a human being. It doesn't matter what you look like. This is the only thing that matters. This is the only thing you're going to be judged by. You got that job because of this, because of this, because of anything you're doing, not because of this.
So again, remember the title of our show is Marriage with Joy. So somebody might think, what are you talking about this thing and this marriage? Well, because marriage is the place where you have the opportunity to discuss these very important, delicate, and I might even say earth-shattering issues. In other words, if your husband is told to his face, no work because we want white people. We don't want white people. I mean, think about it. We could hear in years past, well, no, we don't want black people. Or when I grew up in Boston area, we don't want, no Irish people, even though there were Irish everywhere. But there was a time where they didn't want Irish people. Okay, so is that the human condition? Maybe, but aren't we supposed to be going beyond that? In other words, what's the genius of America, and what's the genius of marriage? They in my humble opinion, they're part and parcel of almost the same idea, that America is a place of opportunity, of growth. Marriage is a place of opportunity and growth. They literally travel along the same highway. And if you get derailed or you miss your exit and all of a sudden you're hurtling down the highway at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, but you're in the wrong direction, well, that doesn't help anybody, does it? So it seems to be that what we thought we were getting through and past has reared its ugly head again in another way. So I'm going to bring out another question that, again, to me is very difficult to even discuss these things, but they need to be talked about. So the purpose of marriage is not just to have children. It's a wonderful thing. Matter of fact, if you can have a marriage and have children because you've both decided this is what you want, we're not talking about just husband and wife. I mean, male and female, because many marriages today that are not, in quotation marks, traditional are having children because people feel the need to want to pass along values, great values, right? The values of character, like we're talking about. So what do you do when you have trusted organizations, particularly hospitals in this case, but it's happening in schools, and I can give you real examples. I don't want to do it right now because it'll take up too much time, but suffice to say, real examples where children, again, as young as 5 and 6 years old, are at least told, if not urged, to consider that they are not necessarily that which they think they are at home, i.e., boy or girl. We call that binary. I don't even know the name. It was so funny. I knew about numbers being binary, but that's all I knew about. But now a binary person is either a boy or a girl, male, female. But in the world today, not everybody, thank God, but in the world today, and it's happening more and more, there's something called non-binary. In other words, fluid. Now, we discussed this, I think, last time and the time before. But again, we're talking about back to school season. This is on the agenda in a number of schools throughout the United States of America. And I don't mean just 5 minutes. I mean, it's become part and parcel. So I'm telling you, over 100 questions to this particular issue. Thank God, and I say thank God, 98 of them are running in the I don't understand. And 2 of them are saying, well, gee, I think it's interesting. But 98 are saying, I don't get it. What am I supposed to do? I don't even want my child or children exposed to this. What do I do? Do I take my kids out of school? Is there an alternative? I need help. what can you tell me? You know, we're like Dear Abby, if anybody remembers that. Okay, I'm dating myself. But people want to know. So Diane, you're a psychologist, plus her mother and a grandmother. What if you send your kids to school and they start telling them, well, you know, Jane, you're really more like Jimmy. And by the way, I'm just going to throw a little sprinkle on top, or what we used to call sprinkles, you know, in Boston on the ice cream. That if Jane starts playing with trucks at the age of 5 or even 3 sometimes, well, that's an indication that you may be really a boy. Jane, John, Jimmy, Hercules, whatever your name is. You hear the question? Parents are dying. They're torn. They're hurt. Help them, Diane.
I hope I can help them. Look, the truth is that I think it's less prevalent a problem as people are afraid of. I don't think that any teacher is going to tell your child, you're not a whatever their birth gender was. Teacher's not going to lay that on a child. I think most children have a natural affinity for their birth gender, and the very, very, very few who may not express that are now encouraged. I think that the overall way of it is boys and girls are encouraged now to play with whatever toys, trucks, dolls, both of them get both. It doesn't mean anything if the boy gets a doll. It means that he gets to model what he sees his mom doing to his younger brother. Or it isn't as serious a problem as we're led to believe by media. It could be that the problem is media rather than an actual problem. I think I go to the playground with my grandkids nearly every day. And except Shabbat, even on Shabbat, we walk to the playground and we see all these other kids. And you see the little girls are all dressed up, climbing on the bars like monkeys, dressed as princesses. You know, they have their tutus, and because that's what they like. And I think there are so few, statistically, if you look at the number of people who are transgender, it is a small portion of 1%. It is not a lot of people. I think people who are confused by what they're told is a much larger number than the reality of people who have a real problem. It's just not that common that people have gender dysphoria. It's this very small section of society. Why it has been picked up by media as a crusade is partially because I think it arouses such angst and such reaction in parents. And I think many parents are afraid that their kid is going to go to school and that their teacher is going to say, Jimmy, you're really a girl. Or Jimmy's going to say it because he's parroting it back and the teacher's going to latch onto it. They're afraid they're going to lose the ability to have any shaping on their child's perception of gender. It's just not the case. It's just not the case. And I do think, I'm going to express a perhaps controversial opinion that I don't think that children should have any kind of medical intervention to change gender until they're adults. I mean, I don't think that, and I know some people would say, oh, but by then it's too late because they've already developed or whatever. But, you know, people hear things and do things on a whim that become life-changing, and then they can't go back. And because we know that statistically such a tiny fraction of adults are transgender, the likelihood that a child that expresses something that is not in line with tradition turning out that way later in life and being happy that they changed their gender, it's small. It's so tiny. And we shouldn't impose any medical intervention on children before they have fully developed their brains, and children's brains into adulthood are changing and forming. Of course, we're always changing and forming, but I know that there are people who regret having gone through with transgender transformations, and it's much harder to go back And that's not to say we shouldn't honor all people equally. I'm not implying that someone who really has gender dysphoria and goes ahead and does things is not worthy of respect. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying we respect every individual, but when it comes to being a parent, I think we just have to assert our own values to the teachers in the classrooms and look at the perspective and see how things are being shaped by media and Facebook and social media and what you hear at the playground and other parents being upset by it. All those things pour into our consciousness and cause us to express being upset. And when we express it, our child picks up on it. And then that exacerbates the problem and it goes round and round. So I think what we need to do as parents is just assume that our children are born with a gender and that gender behavior, as opposed to gender physiologically, gender behavior is fluid. Mm-hmm. There are many girls who like to climb, and that's perfectly fine. And there are people who choose jobs that traditionally may not have been conforming with gender expectations. That's all fine. And if we can just accept everything and not get so upset or assume that any kind of exhibition of behavior is a warning sign or should cause us to make change, and just relax with it and let our children be children. Again, I'm going to mention my husband and I wrote a book. It's called
Wait a minute. Hold it up. Hold it up. What does it say?
Childhood, Protecting Our Children from the National Assault on Innocence. And all these different parental cares are an assault on our children's innocence. They deserve to have a time when they can just be themselves, develop the way they're developing, and not be told there's A, there's B, there's C, there's D. Let them be who they are as individuals and not discuss skin color, not discuss gender, not discuss, marital status of parents, any of that stuff. Let children just enjoy the day and enjoy building or creating or doing whatever they choose to do, and take our parent brains back a step and say, this too shall pass, and our children will develop in a positive way, because I'm going to make sure that they have an environment where they have room to develop as who they are.
So remember, the question on the table for this particular session is, whose kids are they? Diane is asserting, thankfully, that there are kids, my kids, not the culture's kids, not the school's kids, not the hospital kids, because I do want to interject a couple of things here. First, I'll say something a little funny. So again, come from Boston. And in the world of literature, it used to be that if you had a book that was banned in Boston, because these things did happen, that was great, because then you'd really sell a lot of copies. Everybody wants that which is controversial, right? Well, if it's banned in Boston, I better read it. I need to know what's going on with Lady Chatterley's lover. Boring as hell, but doesn't matter. It's banned in Boston, I'm going to buy it. Okay. So that's part of, I think, what you were saying is that now, but I will tell you on the other side that there are several very disturbing situations that exist that are easy to find because they're out there and they're being promoted. And they're being promoted by some of the most prestigious places in the United States of America. Again, Boston Children's Hospital. Boston Children's Hospital has become a center for advocating gender transformation for under 18-year-olds, specifically girls. And if you watch and listen to their literature and their videos, they're saying, by the way, if Jane does play with trucks, well, that's it. By the way, at the age of 3, that's already an indication. So these things are not just like I made it up and I heard it at the playground, I'm telling this. It's out there from the most prestigious places. At Yale also. I mean, it's unfortunately, it's like a wildfire. The other thing is that in Merced County, California, Merced County, which is not San Francisco, just north of San Francisco, I think it is. But it's not San Francisco. It's not LA. Merced County. I listened to it just the other day. The head of the Merced County Public Teachers Union is advocating to only hire teachers who pass certain verbal tests. Yes, I do agree and will only teach that the fluidity. It's a test, like the McCarthy times. So it's not as if that this is very isolated. That there are things happening out there we must be cognizant of. I wish it was only, yes, the number of people that are what we call gender dysphoria. That's not the term that's used, by the way, but the number of people is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent. But it's become such a wedge issue that it's easy to create a conflagration. Because, well, gee, you mean that? Okay, so you're saying beautifully, Diane, but we need to make sure they're our kids, it's our values, and we're going to work the best we can. And again, if it's a situation where you go in, you want to work with the teachers, but if there's a situation where it's just untenable, one must begin to question, is this the place I want my children? We have to think about that. So we're going to hear from Maura Sweeney from the 1930s, and she's going to talk to us about the same issue of gender fluidity, especially amongst teenage girls.
You want me to comment especially on teenage
Yes,
girls?
I think we lost
Diane.
Okay. I hope she didn't leave purposely. Okay.
Barry, I just want to start by saying this. Question A involved teaching that certain colors of the skin were more valuable than others. Question B that we're now addressing is the idea of teaching that you may or may not be your birth binary sexual identity. And in both cases, what I want to say when it comes to parents and sending our children out to school, personally, I would say, what does this have to do with educating children? Why are these things of such sudden, utmost importance in an educational, what should be an academically driven environment for children to learn with their fellow children? So I would say in some cases, these two questions are very much related. Diane had referenced that it is a small indicator. I mean, tell me, when you all went to school, do you remember going to school with some kids that were clearly favoring the opposite sex? Meaning, I still know them today. There was like not one in every class, but we would have someone who was born female, but really was clearly acting out like a male, and maybe vice versa. However, the difference is that we now have made it a major point of attention, focus, and even a delivery system that goes along with the focus and the attention. Diane mentioned the media, and I'm normally in these events every month talking about the role of the media in terms of influencing the way people in society think and therefore behave. But I will also tell you that there is in certain environments in the educational establishment a very clear desire to introduce these ideas of gender fluidity into the educational system for children. And I think in that case, it's unfortunate. It can be just as damaging as introducing this whole idea that one color is better than another, or one is more preferred over another. So what do I say as parents? I always say the same thing. You be the model. Be the model within your home to your children. Live it out and be that influencer. Secondly, I will tell you, and this is an aside, I know of some teachers that have this is in Florida, who've actually left the school system or the traditional school, public school system, because they found it had become so ingrained with, when I use the word politics. I don't necessarily mean Republican versus Democrat, the politics of what education has become. And many of these teachers who went to learn how to become teachers wanted to be there to develop children's minds. And they got very disappointed. So I'm going to say that there is, in certain sectors of society, a concerted effort to influence the outcomes of young children's identities in terms of their sexuality.
You're by the way, Maura, you're absolutely correct. This is part of this is where the questions are coming from. People are asking. I mean, I can feel the angst when they're sending in the questions. They're hurt. They say, I don't know what I thought my kids were going to do: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Okay, maybe here's some of this. But yes, it looks like that there is a concerted effort to create an outcome. And it's not the kind of outcome I want from my kids, my family, my relationship with God or not God, doesn't matter, but that's not what I want. And people are troubled. I mean, we're just nothing. We get hundreds and hundreds, almost 1,000 letters from people. They're really concerned about school.
Barry, if I could add one more thing about this, you brought in Boston Children's Hospital. And I recently read, although I did not go into detail, Tavistock Institute out of England was a big institute apparently for gender transformation for children, which I have to do some more research on this, so don't quote me, but it was actually closing because it was getting some pushback from parents. Many children, many young people will look back on their lives in the future and say, what a dumb thing I did. I was with my friends. I ended up making a move I didn't want. Maybe, have you ever been, now I'm not one of those people, but how many people did you know that would say when they were younger, they got drunk, this is years ago, got drunk, went out and got a tattoo and said, what a stupid thing, I would never do it again. So why then do we take something that is so integral to an individual, such as their identity that they are born with, their gender, and try to influence them or make them question what they are when they should be just concentrating on having fun?
Well, that's what Diane was saying, just what she loved. Hey, let kids play. Okay, so this one's a tomboy, that was a tom girl. So, especially because brains are not even settled until they're 25. And even then, I wasn't. It's hello.
I'm going to underscore what maybe you had said, or maybe Diane. When people undergo these changes, it's so hard to have them undone. In some cases, they're never fully undone. So if it is a change that cannot be undone, why ever would you take a young, impressionable child whose opinions and thoughts and emotions can change overnight and move them into an environment that will affect them for the rest of their lives? The answer would be, if you were really thinking about the betterment and the health and the development of that child, you would not.
Well, yes, but look who's approving it. It's the parent. In other words, if the child is only 14, by the way, you should know, and we're going to go to Lori because I need to have her, and we have coming close to the end of our hour. It's amazing. A lot of these things are done without parental consent or even parental notification. I mean, we're not going to go there. That's for another show. It's mind-boggling without parental notification. Wonderful Lori, talk to us about, I don't know if it's happened because you have a daughter, or even your son could want to be doing.
Well, I'm just a little shocked here because you said something about Yale or Harvard or somebody. When you play with trucks as a little girl, you're supposed to be.
Yes. Boy. Can you imagine? Hello.
Well, maybe I'm the wrong gender.
Maybe are.
I screwed up. I'm supposed to be a boy.
You're a Valkyrie. You're really an Amazon.
I was like, I'm supposed to be a boy, I guess. That to me is just mind blowing. But I coach women and I coach men, but mostly women. And most of these women have children. And these children, the women I coach, are all struggling because their husbands have left. And so they're a single parent. And they struggle as being the only female in the house. There's no male role model there. So many of them have children that are confused. Am I a boy? Am I a girl? And this is just something I've just thought of during this conversation. And because there's no male in the house, and because the fact of their family, mom, dad, are married, this is my nucleus, this is my cocoon, this is my safety, this is my foundation. When dad leaves, the foundation gets rocked and their identity is removed. So everything before, all the family vacations and the holidays, that becomes a lie. That's not real anymore. So if that's not real, my family's not real, well, maybe I'm not who I think I am. And it creates this whole level of confusion. And I guess all I'm saying is if everything goes back to the parents, and parents are the ones who are in charge of their children. If you have one parent here and one parent over there in another household or in another city, and they're, he's got a wife and she's got a new husband, and the kid's like, I don't know who I am. We're already creating mass confusion. So my goal always is to keep that family together. Husband, wife, keep your family together. When you have a family together and the mother goes in and goes, hey, school district, I don't like this, and husband is right there, you have more power, I believe, than if wife is alone and husband is alone. It's still possible, but if the family is strong and holds tight to their values, we can win and we can be powerful against everything else that's happening in the schools.
Thank you. First of all, welcome back, Diane. 1 second. Let me see if I can get it.
Hello, Diane.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I lost internet. I'm in the same room now on my laptop.
Okay,
So I had to
we
sign
were
in.
on board. We were lost from our harbor.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that.
I just want to make mention of two things that I think you won't even believe me when I tell you this, but I've actually read it a number of times. I've researched it because to me, it also is so hard to believe. We talk about, Maury said, what's the point of education? Isn't it to educate? Why are we sending kids to school? It's to educate them, not to indoctrinate, which we'll talk about maybe in another show. But the issue at hand is the following. I'm going to tell you something, and I'm sure not one of you will believe me. There is not just a movement. It is truly being taught that 2 + 2 = 5. Or 2 + 2 does not equal 4 necessarily. So when you talk about confusion, Lori, it's one, if you have husband and wife, kids, and now there's, God forbid, a divorce, which Diane wrote a book about the case against divorce. I urge everybody to see that as well, Saving Children, Case Against Divorce. The point is really, the more confusion you bring into children, the more they're going to gravitate towards whoever will hold them and say, I will affirm whatever you want. Not that what you want is right, because I'm an example. I'm your parent. I have your best interests at heart, as opposed, but whoever is going to do it. By the way, you have this with kids who run away from home. I'll just tell you a very quick, brief story. So I was involved in a commune. I was much younger. And we had kids who ran away, 16, 17-year-old girls. Okay, I was smart enough to understand you don't play around with 16, 17-year-old girls. But the point is that these kids were so confused, they didn't know what to do, and they would do anything. I mean, they would do anything because all they were looking for was some place to say, I need to put my feet. But if you're in school and they don't even teach you that 2 + 2 is 4 anymore, well, then is there any reality? If it's all fluid, not just gender, we're talking about mathematics. So there's a whole issue here. And on that high note, that note of joy, happiness, peace, and love in the world, I want to say a huge thank you again to wonderful Dr. Diane Medved and wonderful Morris Sweeney and fabulous Lori McDermott, your humble host, Barry Shore, for allowing us to be with you today and for you to share. And again, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, now we're on LinkedIn. God willing, millions of people will now be sending us questions, so I won't even be able to get to half of them, but just keep sending questions because we're here to serve. That's our whole purpose. And as we do at the end of every show, we do a hug because that's what the world is really built on, hugs. And our hug is not just for us, it's for everybody that's watching, listening, and will be. HUG stands for heartfelt, unlimited giving. So the count of three, wonderful beings. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. Make it a great one. Best wishes. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.